Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the GovTech Advisors podcast. My name is Andrew. As always, we've got Jordan Abramson, and we've got a very special guest with us today. I'm going to try not to fangirl too much with Johnny Crowder, the CEO and founder of Cope Notes, with us today. Thank you for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. Also, are you the writer of the future GovTech Advisors theme song with the piano behind you?
Yes, and it's going to scare away tons of subscribers because it's probably going to be super awful. But I use that, but I took down the instruction booklets. My daughter's trying to learn how to play piano, and she's got Old MacDonald like down cold, and so we just need to start. We need to springboard off of there.
I'm trying to see when concerts come back. That'll be my first concert, is seeing her do her Old MacDonald cover.
Yeah, well, and then tell you what, she's been to different concerts, so maybe her first concert will be Prison, and maybe we'll just stand by the door. But that being said, I'm kind of diving into you and your background, and that's where you should be kind of talking about yourself. So for those of you on the podcast that don't know about Johnny, and Johnny, for all the people that may already know about you or that want to learn about you, give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, I am 28 and I grew up with a brain that didn't cooperate with me. So I've spent the last quarter century trying to figure out how to have it work with me instead of against me. So a lot of that, the SEO keywords you're looking for in that are mental illness, abuse, self-harm, suicide. I'm fortunate to still be alive. And I went to treatment. I went to school for psych, and I've been doing mental health advocacy for pretty much my entire life, even before I knew I was doing it. And now I run a mental health company. So I wish I could go back in time and tell my young teenage self, don't worry, you're going to do something pretty cool related to the pain that you're feeling right now.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting to hear you talk like that, like talking about mental health and talking about SEO, because a lot of people kind of shy away from talking about mental health and mental health issues and making light of it or talking about it in a normal context. And I think that's one of the things that, one, personally, I find endearing about you. And also I love what you're doing. So can you talk a little bit more about why we should be talking about, what you're talking about, so in almost a cavalier way, and not trying to like hide behind it and try to like destigmatize some of this?
Yeah. So my biggest issue is like the way that I speak about mental health is informed by the fact that most people want to hide behind terms. So like if I say schizophrenia, people go, ooh, oh no. And whether it's a physical recoil or a mental or emotional recoil, the fact is that we feel safer further away. So we use these words as kind of like walls around us. We say like, oh, mental health or mental illness. Maybe I'll share or retweet some clever phrase, and then that'll give me goodwill points with my friends. But the fact is, because we so heavily lean on these terms, we forget like the real human experience of it. And the fact is, we're all experiencing, like, there's not a human being alive. There's not a human being alive or past that has never experienced the sensation of anxiety, the sensation of depression at some level. Mm-hmm. And I think when we lean on terms, we say, oh, mental health or mental illness or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, it distracts. I think those words are important to use, but they distract from, when I was hallucinating, I wouldn't think I'm experiencing an auditory hallucination that is a symptom of paranoid schizophrenia. I would be like, wolves. And that's the thing that we lose in the conversation around mental health, is we lean on the terms. And in doing so, we're trying to protect ourselves from having to recognize the actual feeling and the firsthand experience of it.
Right. Johnny, do you think like it's become more mainstream, right? Like, do you feel like when, you were going through this yourself and where we're at today, that mental health advocacy and support and things like that is becoming more mainstream and maybe okay, I guess we'll say?
So I'll say yes, because I've been doing advocacy for a long time and I've seen the conversation change. But I will say that especially in America, we're doing a lot of back padding around not making a big impact. So we'll say, oh, my company is doing a mental health day and everybody gets a pen. And then we solved mental health. There's lots of like a fanfare and, oh, we'll do a press release and then it'll show, but there's not like concrete action following that. So I would say that while the conversation is a little more ubiquitous, the action after that conversation is where we could really afford to improve. But I think most people feel like if they watch a video or share a tweet or something, they're like, I did it. And then they don't think about mental health for another year, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good, bringing it up, but then also having like a process or a path to continually talk about it or to find help or resources or anything like that is super important. So you've mentioned it a couple of times that you've done advocacy for a long time. You've gone through a lot of personal experiences. When did you decide I'm gonna actually try to make something? Like I'm gonna try to have a bigger impact in the community or in other people's lives?
So there were a few moments, and I'm not a big believer in like turning points, I guess, because we kind of, there's lots of unexciting moments that help us change course as well. But some things that stand out are I used to do comedy. I used to teach and perform improv comedy. And I taught at UCF, which is where I went to school. And there's a local comedian who had actually died by suicide. And I wasn't a huge part of planning the event, but there was it was a benefit it was the Orlando Indie Comedy Festival. And there were like all of these different, I think Kyle Kinane performed, which is like, pretty national name. I think Maria Bamford. I can't remember if Maria did the first year or not, but some pretty, significant names in comedy came to perform, and then a bunch of local comedians. And at the end of the whole fest, we presented a check, like the Orlando comedy community presented a check to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So they're Greater Orlando affiliate. And it was like this big honky novelty check. And I don't know how much we raised. It's comedy. So it might've been like $4,000 or something for something that took months and months to plan and like hundreds of people.
Was it a laughable amount?
Yeah. Oh my word.
Keep going.
Yes. But yeah, when she was, the woman who was running it at the time was on stage and she was saying, thank you. The power of advocacy and community support means that people can leverage their lived experience to provide relief to other people who are experiencing these things. And together we can curb suicide rates and we can help people get the support they need. And I literally chased this woman down the street in Orlando at like 3 a.m. And I was like, wait. And of course she's carrying this big check. She's like, oh, this tattooed guy's going to rob me. And I'm like, I run up to her and I'm like, I want to help. I live with multiple diagnoses. I'm not better. Like I can't go around telling people how great I feel right now, but I want to do something. And there was something in me that kind of woke up where I realized if there's a place that is focused on helping people not feel like I feel, I want to be involved in it. And that was a big catalyst for me, was realizing that I didn't have to be a doctor and I didn't have to feel better already in order to start helping other people.
Well, and with that, how did, first off, tell people about Cope Notes, and second, like how did you make the decision to take Cope Notes into what it is today? Right? How did you decide like that was the route to go?
I think most people who will say something like, and then I decided that this was the direction, are probably lying. Because if you're really building something like that's alive and responds to people and changes every day, you don't actually know what you're building at first. You just say, I need to build something immediately. So literally I launched Cope Notes. I was working on it, and I used to run something called Not a Therapist, which was a digital peer support tool. And when the Las Vegas shooting happened, I just made the website live. I was like, I'm over it. I can't wait. The website's going to suck. The margins are going to be terrible. There's going to be bugs on the website. I need to put it up because I can't wait. So I would be lying if I said that it was this very poised and calculated rollout. It was just so much pain and frustration inside of me that I'm like, I just need to get something out there immediately. But Cope Notes, just for people who are listening, is we use text messages to improve mental and emotional health. So we do that for individuals like you and me, all the way up to school districts and governments. So small, teeny tiny groups, a group of one like me, I'm a subscriber, all the way up to literally tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of concurrent users. And the reason behind scaling it like that was just because I knew that I wasn't living up to what people needed. Like when I ran Not a Therapist, we had this point where we had like 80 people schedule an appointment and I didn't have anybody helping me, and I worked a full-time job. So I was like, okay, let's do the math. I work 50 hours a week at an agency. I now owe 80 people an hour of my time this week. And then I also tour full-time in a metal band. So if I do the math, there are literally not enough hours in the week to do this. And the pain that I mentioned earlier around the Las Vegas shooting, the pain that I felt when I couldn't meet that need is people are going to suffer because I don't have time to help them. And that means I built something that will hurt people because they're expecting the help and they won't get it. So once I realized that I was accidentally leaving people out to dry, I was like, I have to build something that could literally help 100 million people every single day without relying on me, because I need to sleep. I need to, there will be times when I can't help, and I need something that can do that for me.
Sure. One of the things when I first discovered Cope Notes that I thought was so interesting was that it's not an app. It's you say text messages, and some people, it's kind of synonymous with just messaging, right? Messaging inside of an app or anything like that, but you don't have to download a Cope Notes app. And I find that really curious because almost everything now, the thing that says, oh, there's an app for that, or I'm going to build an app, or I'm going to build a portal, or I'm going to build this thing that somebody downloads. And so it's, one of the things that attracted me was that it's not an app. And so can you talk a little bit about why it's not an app and why other people may not need an app, or why it's important that people don't use an app?
Yeah. So I have a million answers.
Okay. Well, we got time.
I have to start by saying that I'm not like some super genius that like arrived at this conclusion on my own.
Right.
Part of it was when I was running Not a Therapist, you could choose your communication medium. So you could choose like Skype or a phone call or email, however you wanted to communicate with your peer support. And people kept choosing text message over and over and over again. So I knew that that was a common thread among people who are seeking peer support, is they were most comfortable with texting. But then I started doing research and I realized, 30 plus million Americans don't have a smartphone, which means that, what are they supposed to do if I make an app? I'm just like, sorry, 11% of the population. I'm just like not going to serve you. And I'm not saying they don't have a phone. They have a cell phone. It's just not a smartphone, meaning that they can't download an app. And there are communities right now who are being virtually punished for not having the newest iPhone. They're like, oh, sorry, you can't access this awesome support because, your parents don't make enough money to get you this $1,000 cell phone. So I knew that there were underserved populations, but I also, my mom was dating a Navy SEAL at the time. So I credit him. It was a retired Navy SEAL. I credit him for us quadrupling down on text messages, because he said, when I was talking to him about it, he said, he was in a VA support group. And he said, a lot of the guys that I'm in a group with have PTSD and depression, anxiety. They would absolutely love to use something like this. But he said, this is when I was still building it, so it wasn't live yet. And he said, Johnny, don't you dare make this an app. Because he said, I have a smartphone, but I don't use apps. I don't know where you would go. I don't know how you would down. And he's not an old dude.
Right.
He was, my mom's age, but he just wasn't super tech savvy. And he's like, I can guarantee you, if you made an app, people in my group wouldn't use it because of, when you download an app, Some of the guys are concerned about privacy data that goes to the app store. And there are other folks who say they have a smartphone, but all they do is text and call, so they don't use apps. And then other folks in my group don't even have a smartphone at all. So he's like, you have to think about the people you're serving and accessibility. Like, what are the people that are being left out? And it really stuck with me.
Yeah. I mean, to be the most inclusive, you choose the most ubiquitous in that's text messaging. I think it's smart. I expected it not to be a text message, and so I was taken a little bit aback. So can you describe a little bit for those, because I'm sure there's some people listening to this that know of Cope Notes, but for those that don't, can you describe kind of what somebody could experience when they sign up for Cope Notes? And I totally missed it at the beginning of the episode, and Jordan's going to chastise me afterwards. Like, the whole reason, one of the big reasons that we're talking about this now is we're in the month of May, and this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we are trying to get the word out about this. So if somebody decides after the podcast day, I'm going to go sign up, what should they expect?
So I want to start by highlighting what we don't do, which might seem counterintuitive.
Sure.
But I want to say that this is not a therapy app. So that's the first thing that people think is, oh, the only mental health support is like connecting me with a therapist. But the fact is, you're not going to set appointments. You're not going to download anything. It's not a crisis resource. You know, this is something completely different. And what I would say is, mental health is complex in that you can't just do work on it every once in a while. So 1 hour of therapy once a week can do some good, but if you're backsliding 6 days and 23 hours in the middle of those appointments, it's undoing the good that you did in that hour. So Cope Notes approach is, how do we do low touch, passive, low effort, but high impact? So how do we take maybe 30 seconds or a minute from people every single day, and we say, if you spend this 30 seconds or 1 minute reading a text message that we send you, it will train your brain to think in healthier patterns. So we have these text messages that are written by peers with lived experience. They are reviewed and approved by a panel of mental health professionals, but they're all casual and informal, easy to read, and they're all based on a proven psychological principle. Each one, there's psychology facts and journaling prompts and exercises, but each one of them will show up on your phone at a random time. So it'll interrupt your day, and they're designed to interrupt negative thought patterns as they're occurring. So you never know when we'll text you or what the text will say. But what you do know is that over time, as these texts interrupt your daily life, your brain will form new neural pathways associated with positive thoughts. So there's some really awesome neuroscience stuff happening in your brain. But when you read the text, you just think, good point. Or I never thought about it that way. And over time, your brain starts to adapt to those patterns of thought.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's perfect for a pattern interrupt, right? Like, having the ability to kind of just randomly see it, change what you're doing, and back to the point of text message for an app. I'm notorious for, I download an app, the app's awesome. I turn on notifications, and then at some point it becomes like, I just clear, right? Like, I just clear the notifications and don't read. But I can tell you, if you send me a text message, I will read it every time. Even if I can tell early on, I see the stop in big bold letters, like, I'll still read the message. Hey, what did you say here? Right? What are you trying to sell me here? I think what you're doing with the neural voice in the pattern interrupts, like, it's a great program, I guess, or a great break up to my day, I guess.
What you just brought up is pretty important too. When people ask why we did text messages, if you read app notification engagement rates, like someone actually opening an app notification, it's something like, I know it's single digit percent. I've seen as low as 1.7% for smartphone users. The highest I've ever seen was 7% for app notification. And that was like a big freaking deal. I read an article about someone hit 7% read rates on app notifications, and I was like, good Lord. But then text messages oscillate between 98 and 99% read rate, not open rate, read rate, meaning that the individual read the words in the message. It is there's no contest.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I will back that up 100%. Of the 100 apps on my phone, I've probably got 3 that I will actually read the notification of, just because of one way or shape or form.
Right.
One of them you can appreciate is the sneakers app, right? On the drop day, see what it is. When I forget, that 7 a.m. notification. And then for me, it's just sports apps, right? Like NFL draft was last week. Like here, I turn on Twitter notifications for certain people, and that's it. So, but like you said, those text messages, I'll read it every time.
Right. I get to the point now that when I install an app and it asks, hey, do you want to enable notifications? I just say no. Because
same.
There's just why there's just, you're inundated. But there's a couple. So I want you to go back to a comment that you made, because you talked a little bit about it, because so I've actually shown Coke Notes to a couple of people that I'm friends with and some of my family members. And the first question they asked me is, who is this guy, right? And who is he the guy to say he's the authority to do this thing? And I said, oh yeah, that's because I saw the idea, I saw you, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. This guy seems really cool. And then when somebody said, hey, you should probably think a little bit more about this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is mental health. And so when we started talking a little bit more about that, you do have this team, and it's not just, hey, I came up with this really cool idea on the bus, and I'm going to write it down. I'm going to text it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit more? You touched on the science a little bit, but can you talk about a little bit about the process? I'm not talking about going into your secret sauce, but just for everybody that's out there saying like, why am I going to listen to a 28-year-old kid's text messages?
Yeah, I love that. When I first told people about the idea, they were like, you're just going to text a bunch of people, like whatever you think makes sense. And I was like, that is a terrible idea. That is not what I am doing. Right. But I love that perception. People are like, are you texting me? But I would, for the people who say, why listen to a 28-year-old, I would ask this question in response. Right now, actually, let's just do it with you guys. So Jordan and Andrew, think in your mind, just off the top of your head, of someone who has made a transformative impact on your life. Like change the direction of your life, and just kind of give me a nod when you have that person.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that person a licensed clinician?
No.
Okay.
No.
So the misconception is, well, only licensed clinicians can provide the type of support that is life-changing. Anecdotally, that's super not true. Statistically, that's super not true. However, it doesn't mean that clinicians shouldn't sit at the table. We still need them. So what we've done is we've taken the peer support. So both of you and most people have benefited from peer support, which is someone who has been through a similar situation, who is offering insight or guidance, or just allowing you to speak to them and being that friendly ear. It is transformative. There are decades of research around peer support. So our base is peer support in that every text in our library is written by a peer with lived experience. But then here's where the clinicians come in. The clinicians aren't writing messages, like wagging their fingers, wearing lab coats, saying like, this is what you should be doing. It's peers writing it, saying, here's what I wish someone would have said to me when I was going through this. And then we have a clinical oversight panel, and these are, the folks with letters after their name and degrees on their wall and stuff. And they comb through this content and they say, is this trauma informed? Is this based on proven psychological principles? Is this appropriate and applicable across demographic and life experience? So we have a literal team of licensed clinical social workers and researchers, PhDs, all of these folks who are combing through this content regularly to make sure that what we're doing is like psychologically sound. And I love the idea of someone looking at me and saying, how on earth do we trust this guy? And I say, you don't have to, because I write the draft. I'll write a draft of a text message, but if it doesn't get through 12 sets of extremely rigorous review from these clinicians, then you'll never receive the text in the first place.
Right. Well, you made a comment. You're making lots of good comments, by the way. You made a comment in that statement that so last week we are, or actually tomorrow. Well, it doesn't really matter because this is being released later. We had a company called Lighthouse come do the podcast with us, and they make mental health resources and tools and pathways to get those resources specifically for first responders and the things that they go through being a first responder, which are immense. Can you talk a little bit about who, depending on the mental health, issue that they may feel that they have, or that they've been through, or their lived experience, who is a good candidate for something like Cope Notes? Is it a first responder? Is it somebody that's a suicide survivor?
So I would say this: a big misconception around mental health services is that they have to be exactly tailored to every specific thing, your exact needs. And I would equate that to someone who has an iron deficiency saying, oh, don't give me a multivitamin that will give me 100% iron because I don't want all those other vitamins. I only need I only need iron. If you only have iron, you will die. You need those other vitamins. So Cope Notes is very much a comprehensive and holistic resource. If you say, oh, I only experience bipolar 1, I never experience depression, I never experience anxiety, I'm never afraid, I'm never worried, I have a perfect relationship with my body and food and finances and my career, you're lying. You're lying. So our whole approach is, how do we address the individual things that you're experiencing while supplementing the areas of your life that you do not recognize as being in need of support? Because the fact is, if you always recognized an area of your life that needed support in the moment it needed support, you'd never mess anything up. You'd have a perfect life. So nobody can do that. I would say the perfect candidate, I don't know the height, I don't know the age, I don't know the demographic. I will say, in terms of personality, I would say Cope Notes works very well for someone who says, I know I want to do something for my mental and emotional health, but I don't know what to do. I don't know that first best step. I don't know that next best step. I can't make a huge commitment. I can't change my whole life to center it around some treatment protocol, but I do want to do something. Cope Notes is for those people.
Johnny, you had said earlier in kind of talking in the past that you've been even working with government agencies and cities, municipalities that want to help support their citizens in kind of this time that we're all living in together. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what does that kind of look like and how's that kind of worked?
Yeah. And again, this is going to be a moment where I don't take credit for being the mastermind behind it. This was inbound. So we've been servicing agencies for a while. Like, an agency will contract with us and say, hey, we have 1,000 veterans who we service over the course of a year and we want to get subscriptions for them. But we were getting to the point where we were serving multiple agencies within a given county or city. And then we had counties approach us and say, why the heck do you have 7 contracts with 7 different agencies in one county? It's so much paperwork, so many moving parts. Why not just consolidate into one contract with the county or with the city itself so that we don't have to have all of these concurrent contracts? So essentially what we'll do is now, I mean, we still service agencies and stuff, but with governments or any large group, we say, how many folks are you trying to serve? And we'll set them up with a group subscription, which is basically they get a code. So let's say, we're going to work with, what county do you live in, Jordan?
I'm in Orange County.
So, Orange County, Florida. Orange County, Florida is already a client. So this is going to sound funny, but let's just say we're going to contract with Orange County, California.
Right.
I almost said Georgia, Orange County, California. And we would give them a redemption code. So let's say their redemption code is Orange County, CA or something like that. People can go to copenotes.com/redeem, type in their phone number and the code, Orange County, CA, press redeem, and they're in. So you could literally have like 100,000 residents sign up in a single day without the government having to do anything. So the biggest advantage of us, and I didn't recognize this as such an advantage for government when we started working with government, but the biggest advantage is it's like a set it and forget it thing for these municipalities who say, listen, we know there's a need. There's no way we could build health education programming around mental health or scale it. We can't hire a bunch of people. We can't task someone with managing a bunch of subscriptions. We need like a quick, long lasting resource. So quick to set up and long lasting, meaning that people are still getting support 11 months from now without needing me, not me, but like a county admin or something to have to constantly maintain the platform.
Sure. So when you contract with a government, is there ever do they offer within Cope Notes the ability to go to like governments, like their specific county resource or contact or portal if they do have a mental health portal? Is that possible? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So one of the coolest things about, well, it was very frustrating to build our own infrastructure, but now that we have,
Right.
one of the cool things is that we're able to like custom program certain text messages. So like our normal crisis response text directs folks to the crisis text line. That's who we work with. But if a county says, hey, can you make the crisis response text direct people towards our local mental health services agency or whatever, we're like, yeah, all that is us changing 160 characters in our
Sure.
database. So it's like, it's really cool how we can customize and how those teeny tiny little customizations can make a huge difference for a government. Cause now they're like, great, now we don't have to figure out a new way to communicate to people where to turn or what services exist. It's like we can just plug it into something that's already existing and it takes 15 seconds.
Well, can you explain like a crisis event? It's not like, hey, there's a natural disaster, we're sending out a text message, by the way, there's a crisis coming. It's maybe something that somebody's saying, hey, I'm in a moment of what I feel is a crisis. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, although Cope Notes has been deployed in the wake of multiple natural disasters, so that's also something that we do. But yeah, I'm more talking about a personal crisis where inevitably every single municipality that we meet with says, well, what if someone is indicating like they text back and they indicate that they are going to harm themselves or somebody else. And we, without getting too technical about it, we have a system that can identify that and respond accordingly with a crisis response text that connects them with the appropriate resource. So that is one scenario where we could just say, yeah, if you have a local resource that you'd prefer we point to, in a scenario like that, it's something that we can program.
We were earlier today, we talked about this with Lighthouse. There's a lot of concerns about privacy, right? Security and things like that. And you kind of lightly touched on this. What does Cope Notes know about their end users? What kind of data do you have? If somebody says, I don't want to be in a database, what would you kind of say to that? Yeah,
I would say that I almost got kicked off a population health panel 2 years ago for saying that we shouldn't be collecting data. So listen, I understand that we live in an age where people think that more data is better or higher tech is better, but it's just not always true. Those things don't track linearly. So the truth is, and governments are always very surprised by this because one of their first questions is like, what about first responders? What about folks who are in witness protection? What about folks who are in like human trafficking survivors, and other folks who have like very personal, sensitive information? I say it makes no difference because they'll never tell us who they are anyway. And people are truly shocked to find out how little information that Cope Notes collects. So literally, Jordan, you could go to our website right now. You go to copenotes.com, go to subscribe, type in your phone number, subscribe. I wouldn't know that it was you because all we see is a phone number. That's it. All of your responses are anonymized. So we're not collecting your address, your name, even. It's not linked to any health information or anything like that. And it is... early on, it wasn't like that. We used to collect a little more info, and we started working with this like HIPAA auditor who is helping us design our forms and the way we stored information in our database. And he said, you know what? A lot of this information that you guys are collecting doesn't really provide a lot of value for the user. I mean, it doesn't equip you to actually make the product better for the people using it. So he's like going through identifying, oh, maybe you don't need this and maybe you could take this out. And eventually we got down to where we just had a list of phone numbers and he's like, boom. So we built our whole system around being able to serve people anonymously. So when people ask, how do you protect my data? I always say, what data? You never gave it to us in the first place.
Right. Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point on the other side that you made a comment to. So how do you know that what you're offering is having an impact or not?
So this is really cool and something that a lot of people don't understand. Cope Notes has a living text library, which means that we have an active feedback loop with every single subscriber. So not only do we send people feedback texts that say, you know, is this helping? What new feature would you like us to add? Is this, you know, how do you feel that your mental and emotional health is performing and improving and so on? So we do have like formal feedback measures in place, but we have a lot of qualitative feedback measures in place, meaning that we're not measuring them quantitatively. We do that with our formal feedback requests. Like, you know, 86% right now, 86% of Cope Notes users report that Cope Notes has made a positive impact on their mental and emotional health within 30 days. And like thousands of people have responded to that. So that's a quantitative measure, but qualitative measure, I'm saying right now, we send a text to Andrew. Cope Notes sends a text to Andrew. And Andrew thinks, I don't really know about that one. So Andrew, you text back, that text was stupid. I didn't like it. It didn't have anything to do with my life. And also, I'm in a bad mood. Don't text me. Let's say you send that. That feedback is sent anonymously into we have an inbound text log, and then that's reviewed. And we make live changes to our text library based on qualitative feedback from our users. So if you say you don't like a word, if you say something isn't relevant, that's passed to our clinical oversight panel, and they take a look and say, what can we do about this text? What do we need to change? How do we provide more value? So we have literally our users are shaping Cope Notes, and the longer they stay on the platform, the more influence they have over the direction of the content. It's like magic.
So if I'm hearing you right, then so Andrew and I sign up today, both jointly sign up today at the exact same moment in time. We're not guaranteed to get necessarily the same message. We may get the same message today, but going forward in the future, we may be getting different messages. Am I hearing you right on a day-to-day basis?
It is virtually impossible for you to receive the same text message at the same time. Actually, it is literally impossible unless it's a service text. So no two people ever get the same text at the same time. It's like, so we use something called artificial randomization, which is like what Apple uses to shuffle playlist. So we have fixes in place to make sure that patterns don't arise, because true randomization could deliver you 7 texts about depression in a row, and you'd be like, what the heck is happening? This is really like, what are they trying to say about me? So we do have some things in place to make sure that it feels random, but no, it's not like that's a big misconception around Cope Notes, is that it's just one mass text to the whole list. But the truth is, if that was the case, the reason why you ignore app notifications is because they're going to 30 million people at the same time. But if you receive a text message and you know that you're the only person in the universe to receive that message at that time on that day, you can't help but think, why me? Why now? How does this apply to my life? If I'm the only person, why did I get this now?
Right. So the fact that you're doing it randomly, and you touched on this earlier, can you talk about the specific the method or technique or the science behind sending it randomly? I know there's a term behind it, but I'm not versed in it. Can you tell us, educate the layman here, what is it and why does it work? You talked about forming neural pathways, but what is it actually called?
Yeah. I will preface this by saying, if a listener wants to hear the whole story, I gave a TED Talk about the neuroscience behind Cope Notes. So if you search on YouTube, Johnny Crowder TED Talk, it will come up. That's like the long, it's 18 minutes. So if you're like a real nerd like me, definitely go look that up. But if you want the short version, the science behind what we do, it's called ecological momentary intervention, or EMI. And what it means is interrupting lifestyle, like your daily life, your automatic negative thought, your bad moods, your frustration. We're interrupting those thought patterns with a catalyst for positive thought, so that over time your brain learns to incorporate and preempt negative thought to prioritize positive thought. So it literally is changing the way that your brain processes information over time. But the relief is it doesn't feel like that when you're reading a text message. It's not like, oh, here comes an ecological momentary intervention.
Right.
It feels like a text from a friend, and all of the heavy lifting is really being done by your subconscious.
Sure. So, I mean, you've got a lot of this is almost all of it, or all of it is grounded in science. So again, for those of you guys that may be listening, because a lot of people, they hear about things like this and they immediately want to discount it as, just somebody thought this thing up and that thought it'd be cool. But there's some serious work on top of experiences and on top of some serious, science behind this to help people. Jordan, I think you had a comment. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh.
So I guess I'll ask it a little different of a question. So, pandemic happens, right? I think for a lot of people, it's been a mountain on the back, right? For a lot of us, when it comes to both physical and mental. Now that we're looking beyond this, right? We're getting kind of looking in kind of a closer to normal. I guess, how do we make sure mentally, right? We don't slip back. Right? Like we don't take the last 12 months and let it kind of put a mountain on our back forever. How do we do that?
That's such an awesome question. I straight up think that that's what 99% of people hope that they can do, is go like, oh, well, now that that's behind me, and then like not make changes and like not have to have a recovery period, like a transition period. But that it's a great perspective. You're saying, how do we avoid the trap of thinking that we can snap right back into everything like it was before? And I think the answer is ultimately sustainability. So I don't know if either of you guys have ever tried to lose weight. I had to lose 50 pounds at one point. I was taking an antipsychotic medication. I gained a lot of weight on that medication. So I set a goal to lose 50 pounds. And when I started exercising again, I'm telling you, I hope somebody can relate to this, because this is what I did. For the first week, I'm like, 3 hours on a treadmill every day, and I'm eating a ton of salads, and I'm like, I'm gonna beast this. And then like, day 8, I'm like, nope. And I eat a whole sleeve of Oreos, and I lay on the couch and I don't work out for a week. Right. And my problem there was that I wasn't prioritizing stability, right? Like I was trying to front load everything I had to do, when in reality, a much more intelligent approach and a more effective approach would have been, how do I do, instead of 3 hours a day for a week and then no progress for a month, how do I do 30 minutes a day for 45 days? How do I do less over a longer period of time, so that it becomes kind of a lifestyle thing for me, that I adjust to it, I adapt to it? And as people transition, my encouragement to them is like, don't try to do everything immediately. Like make a plan and say, 4 times a week for the rest of the year, I'm going to do X, and like choose something, or say every morning for just 90 seconds, I'm going to pray, or for 90 seconds, I'm going to stretch 90 seconds. I'm going to breathe, and no, I'm not going to listen to music. I'm not going to leave my room yet. I'm just going to take these little moments. Because if you say every morning I'll do an hour of meditation starting tomorrow, you're gonna quit.
Right.
So my encouragement is, don't focus on doing big things every once in a while. Like I mentioned earlier, do something small consistently, because consistency is the only thing that your brain depends on when it comes to thought patterns and habits. All that matters, if you do something every day for a year, you kind of are that thing. But if you go skydiving once, you're not the skydiving guy. That's a one really big thing, but your brain isn't restructuring itself to prioritize that. It takes consistency.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think I read something the other day that they say when you make a New Year's resolution, a lot of people say, well, I want to, bulk up, or I want to lose this ton of weight. And, people don't achieve it because it's such an unrealistic goal. They tell you to set really realistic, achievable goals. And so have we ever thought about losing weight? Absolutely, every single day of the week. So I think I'm one of the few people that lost weight during COVID because I did exactly what you described without even realizing. As you're describing it, I'm like, oh, I did that exact thing. But I did it on accident. And now it's kind of part of the routine. It's the whole reason I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning to get on the bike, even though I did not want to do it. I also wanted to finish Mortal Kombat. I needed to finish the movie. So Cope Notes. So I have a personal question. Cope Notes isn't an app, but what are some really cool apps for those the technical people on here that they may say, I want to use Cope Notes, but to your point, doing one thing may get the ball rolling, but there's multiple things. There's therapy, group therapy, there's sessions, there's other apps. What kind of apps do you use to help you?
So believe it or not, this is going to sound pretty informal, but I actually rely on my Notes app and my voice recorder app that are already in my phone pretty extensively. And I know people are like, where's the high tech version? You shut up. You don't need a high tech thing. You need something that works. So if it's high tech, great. If it's low tech, great. I use the Notes app in my phone for gratitude journaling. So when I get frustrated, I'll open up a Notes app in my phone and I'll just make bullet points, 3 things, 5 things I'm thankful for. And it really has made a big difference. If I get frustrated about something, I'll open up my Notes app and kind of journal. Well, now I use Cope Notes for that. So I'll like text back in the Cope Notes thread. That's what that's for. But definitely gratitude journaling has made a big difference. And the Notes app is great because it comes on your phone. Right. So that's something you don't have to go out of your way to utilize it. And the voice recorder app has helped me a lot because it allows me to talk through something. So when I drive, for example, and I'm on my way somewhere and I'm stressed or I'm late or I'm worried, I'll turn on my voice. And even if I never listen to it, even if I never listen to the voice recording, speaking out loud and trying to articulate what it is that I'm frustrated about, trying to identify where the source of that distress is, and knowing that it's being recorded on my phone, even if I just delete the recording, there's tremendous peace in knowing that I'm giving myself the space to talk through it. So I don't actually use a lot of mental health apps personally, but I do leverage existing apps that I already have to improve my mental health. And that's something that's always bothered me about the way that mental health is talked about, is people think that there's this thing outside of them. Like, so for example, Cope Notes is literally termed an illness self-management resource. And that means that it's investing in you and your ability to process information, your ability to cope. So there are people who think, oh, I need X. I need something outside of myself. And ultimately, I can guarantee you that with stuff you have around your house, like I even drum on my leg. For example, when I get really stressed out, I have a calm down playlist on my phone on Spotify. That's an app that I use for mental health, Spotify. Right. So I'll open up my calm down playlist and drum on my leg along to one of the songs, and it calms me down. So I would encourage people to kind of think outside the box, and instead of thinking that there's some magical thing out there, look at the things that you already have, and wonder to yourself, how can I leverage this to improve my mental health?
See, for me, I don't know why I started doing this. Certain things that I would want to say, but I couldn't bring myself to say to people, I found very therapeutic in writing them down just to get it out of my head. And then I shred it, right? I'll shred it up. So that way, if I don't want somebody to see it or any know or whatever, I want to get to them. Like for me, it's the writing, right? Like I said, I'll pull out a piece of paper, randomly write it down, and then I shred it just so that's way it's not something that I fester on. So it was really great to hear you say notes and recording, and because for me, it's not a tech, paper is not technology at all. So it was really good to hear you say that.
this is why I like talking about it, because as you know, a lot of the things that you're talking about are doing things more purposefully, because as you guys were describing that, I remember I used to have like this massive drafts folder in my email that I would write the email that I really wanted to write to that person, but I would never put them in there, and I would get it all out, and then I would just I would say I wouldn't save it. And so but being aware of doing those things and knowing, hey, when I get to this spot again, or when I'm starting to feel this way, I should just do this. I think a lot of people just happen into it, maybe, or you know. So this is, I mean, I'm not being facetious when I say this. This discussion is helping me realize that I should be more purposeful in some of the things that I do to kind of cope without even realize that I do it. So,
dude, the way that I think about this stuff is like when I've been pretty into fitness my whole life. And I hear a lot of folks say like, I'm thinking about working out. I want to get some Under Armour gear. And I just think, what are you talking about? That like does not have to be a step in your process. Like
right.
you can, or they're like, oh, I want to buy home gym stuff. And I'm like, if you just go walk, just literally just walk. If you just walk, you're already way further than 90% of people. But I think people want there to be something else. And maybe that helps. It's like a psychological totem that they can cling to. But the fact is, don't ask me about like the greatest supplements. If you're not drinking water, drink water. That's something you have. And the thing that makes Cope Notes really powerful for me as a journaling tool that I didn't realize, back to what Jordan was saying about shredding, I used to write stuff out and crumple it up and throw it away, or write stuff out and burn it, or throw it in the garbage or something like that. Delete a file and you hit the trash can thing. And I realized something was happening in me over time where I felt like I was throwing my opinion in the garbage. I was like writing out how I truly felt, and then basically psychologically categorizing it as like trash or garbage or something that should be thrown away. And it felt very invalidating, actually, to write out, here's how I really feel, but that my true feelings belong in the garbage. So being able to text in a thread with Cope Notes and press send, it's so validating. It's like, no, I'm not going to delete this. This is not garbage or trash. This is the way that I really feel. And I'm going to press the send button and see it sent, and I will feel validated and heard, because I want to make sure that I don't start to think that my true feelings are throwaway.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Johnny,
really
sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's really profound. And Jordan, I was watching you as Johnny was talking about the fitness equipment and all of that kind of stuff, because Jordan and I, we've been talking a lot over COVID of, oh, we should get this thing or this special mirror with these things on it, you know.
Oh, so I still want all that stuff.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Sorry, Jordan. I cut you off. Go ahead, man.
No. The order has been placed. It'll be here in 10 to 12 weeks.
Can't wait to see it. I've already told a couple of people that you ordered it, and they're like, oh, let me know how he likes it, you know?
Yeah. So Johnny, we learned about why Cope Notes was created, right? We learned about what Cope Notes is today. Where is it tomorrow? Like, what's next for Cope Notes? What's next for you in the business, the organization, the capabilities? Like, what's next?
Well, I can share some stuff. I can't share most stuff.
Sure.
But suffice it to say that Cope Notes is becoming like way better of a product than I ever dreamed. Like once a week, there's a development that I'm like, oh my Lord, that's the most genius thing I've ever heard of. And how is nobody doing that? And then we're implementing stuff and testing it for efficacy. So literally every single day, Cope Notes is getting better and better, which is a great feeling. I would say that moving forward, Cope Notes is focusing a lot on message relevance. So not only the quality of the message you're receiving, but also on how relevant it is to you in your life, without collecting personal information that would allow us to predetermine some of those things, or more accurately, incorrectly assume some of those things. We say, oh, Jordan is a Caucasian 30 something, and he probably needs to get a message like this. And we're like lumping people into categories. We don't want to do that. We're trying to say, how can we make our system so intelligent that as Jordan communicates with Cope Notes, as he journals, Cope Notes actually delivers more relevant information to him over time. So we're working a lot on, that's about all I can share, but we're doing some really cool stuff around that. And around community impact, I would say where we're really starting to see a ton of traction is not only with government folks, but also through those municipalities, actually getting Cope Notes into the hands of the school districts, into the hands of educators and their students, and working on that school climate. It is really heartwarming to me as someone who is self-harming in public school to know that municipalities are making these really truly compassionate decisions to put preventative mental health supports into their schools. And not just for people who self-report, people are going to the counselor, but saying this is for all students. It's not for someone with a student with a diagnosis. It's not for anyone who feels sick or like a freak. This is, our school is prioritizing mental and emotional health for all students, for all staff and faculty. And the power of a movement like that culturally, think about it. If you have a school district, and let's say you have, let's say you have 50 schools in a district, for example, and each of those schools has 5,000 people at it. And all of those 5,000 people, each of those 50 schools are receiving health education, like psychoeducation, like positive psychology, peer support on a daily basis. We're talking about like transforming communities permanently. So the vision of Cope Notes is not only what are we doing in the lives of the individual, but how does this change how students interact with each other? How does this change how educators perform at their job? How does this change the goals that schools are setting for school performance, student performance? And then not only that, but those kids are going home and talking to their parents. And like, what does this mean for the household, like the nuclear family? So we're focusing a lot on, we've been focused on the individual experience for a long time, and we've gotten really, really good at that. And now we're thinking, how do we impact families? How do we impact communities? And I can't wait to see what Cope Notes looks like next year.
Right. Well, I think that probably is a little bit why I saw today that you are looking, because you made a comment earlier about only being one guy and only having, a finite amount of time. It looks like you're expanding because you want to expand your reach. So I think I heard right that you might be hiring some new salespeople, or you want some salespeople on the staff.
Yes. So, if someone is listening to this and is like, man, I'm really good at sales, but I want to make like a positive impact. I'm a mission-driven type of person. I want to make the world a better place. We are hiring sales folks, and with the strict condition that they are people who wake up in the morning and think like, I am going to change the world today.
Right.
And whether it's through a demo or through a phone call or through an email or through, putting together a slide deck or whatever it is, managing a pipeline, whatever. Like when I wake up in the morning, I don't think, time to sit down at my computer and do work. I think about like people in Kenya, right? And like people in Chicago, and people right in my own backyard, people who just lost their spouse, or people who are battling with addiction or eating disorders right now. And I think I'm gonna spend all day helping those people. So yes, we are looking for salespeople, but we're looking for salespeople who understand that through the sales process, they will be literally, not figuratively, literally saving people's lives.
Right. Well, go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, so if Johnny, if somebody listening to this is that person, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to throw their resume in the line or name in the hat? What's the best way to get them kind of top of mind with you?
Yeah. So if you are that person, hi, my name is Johnny. Great to meet you. If you go to copenotes.com and scroll to the bottom, in the footer, there's a link that says work with us. And if you click that, then you'll see the open positions, and you can learn more and apply there. It's like not a very involved application process. Not like there's 100 things you have to make an account. Literally just fill out some quick personal info, attach your resume, and then we'll hopefully get back to you and change a lot of lives together.
Right. Well, so our time is coming to an end. And so I was going to, I'm sure it's the same spot, but for anybody that's listening that maybe doesn't want a job, but they're in a community and they want to introduce Cope Notes to their community, or they are talking about how can I maybe partner with Johnny to not only help with them to make a positive impact, but to also help you kind of scale what you're doing as well. Is copenotes.com the best place to go, or where would you like people to go to continue learning after the discussion today?
There is literally not a better place on the internet than copenotes.com. So okay. There's a contact form on there, but perhaps more pertinently, if you scroll to that footer, of course, there's a contact us button, but there's also a partnerships button. So if you're trying to get involved, but you're not really sure what that looks like, definitely, I think there's a button that says partner with us, so you can hit that. But for groups, which I imagine that a lot of the folks who are listening are folks who do have some sort of influence or say over groups and the types of resources that they have access to. If you go to copenotes.com, there's a tab that says who it's for, and you can click for a group, or you can go to copenotes.com/group. And we'll get in touch with you right away, because, and this is something I've shared with you, Andrew, without getting too graphic, I know that every single day that we spend not addressing this problem, there are amazing people who are suffering. Sure. So the sense of urgency that I have around this has nothing to do with the fact that I run Cope Notes. Cope Notes could disappear tomorrow and I would still have the same sense of urgency, because I was the person who had been neglected and fell through the gaps of the mental health care system. And I can't sleep at night knowing that those people are still hurting when there's decision makers who have all the authority in the world to make a difference, but they're saying, well, let's do it next week or next month, or, well, there's a bunch of red tape. No excuses. Like, there are people who are hurting and you can help.
Right. Yeah. And I love how Cope Notes is like the lowest barrier to entry to get started. And I think for those of you guys that are listening or watching this, when you go down to partner with us and looking to see who Cope Notes has already partnered with and is already doing things with, it's a shocking list. It's a shockingly long list, but there is some pretty crazy names that I would not have expected. I won't ruin any of them. Go on there, go take a look. I was like, oh, that's really, really, really cool. And also, another plug for you. I almost wore it today. I did not wear your merch today. There's a merch button down there too that's hidden. So go buy a cool Cope Note shirt as well. It kind of looks like what's behind him right now. Jordan, I cut you off, man. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. No, I would just say, as we kind of wrapping it up, is I learned a lot. Yeah. I was really excited to have this conversation. So I learned a lot. Really looking forward to continuing the conversation. Look forward to the premiere, and really just looking forward to seeing how we can kind of help drive the mission and the purpose, right? And help finding you some great talent that can help kind of spread that mission as well too. So I appreciate you jumping on with us for today for sure, Johnny.
Yeah, this is, I'm just thinking of listeners. I can't help. Anytime I do an interview, I'm thinking of listeners. And I'm like, I know that right now there's someone listening who's saying, I've wanted to make a difference in my community. I just didn't know how. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to present. I don't know what it looks like. And I'm telling you, this is what it looks like. It takes someone like you, that person listening, who feels that tingle every time they read a headline about depression on the rise or suicide rates on the rise, or every time you hear a friend saying that they're going through something and you feel that tingle means that you are predisposed to be a mover and a shaker. And I know both Andrew and Jordan to be the type of people who are focused on making a positive impact. And so thank you guys for allowing me to be on this episode, but more importantly, thank you to people listening for self-selecting to be a part of this conversation, because the fact is, if you've listened for an hour and you're still engaged with a mental health conversation, you are one of the only people that we can turn to right now and say, how do we make the world a better place?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being so gracious with your time, and I can't wait for everybody to hear this. So on that note, I can't think of a better spot to stop talking about this, even though we could probably talk about this all day long. But Johnny, thank you for your time. Jordan, it was always good to see your face. And thank you guys for spending time with us on the GovTech Advisors podcast. See you.